Hey guys, today's episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast is presented by our Sports Spectrum quarterly magazine. 4 issues each quarter coming your way right to your inbox. You can subscribe today at sportspectrum.com. You know, our latest issue has Adam Wainwright on the cover, him and his wife Jenny. We do a great story on the Wainwrights, their legacy, playing with the St. Louis Cardinals, where God has taken them, why he hasn't retired yet. And I really thought it was a fascinating article because it focuses on Jenny as well, Mrs. Wainwright, you know, Adam's wife, and the role that she's played in this long and really storied career that Adam Wainwright has had in Major League Baseball. So if you want to read that story, it's a really good one. You can get the latest edition of Sports Spectrum's magazine right now and subscribe today. It's $18 for 1 year. For a full year, it's just $18. But if you want to get a 2-year subscription, it's an even better deal at just $30 for a 2-year subscription to Sports Spectrum's magazine. Check it out today at sportspectrum.com to subscribe. We hope you'll check it out. I really do believe it's the best thing that we do here at Sports Spectrum is our quarterly magazine. Again, check it out at sportspectrum.com.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. My email, jason@sportspectrum.com. If you'd like to reach me, jason@sportspectrum.com, or you can check out our website. That's really the best place to go for all of our content here at Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith. It's available and it's free. Did I say free? Over at sportspectrum.com. Check it out. All the free content, podcasts, articles, devotionals, testimonials, all available at sportspectrum.com. Today on the podcast, I'm going to introduce you to a guy named Daniel Grothe. Daniel is a pastor and an author. He's the associate senior pastor at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's been there about 16 years or so. Married to Lisa and lives on a hobby farm outside of Colorado Springs with their 3 kids and a thriving throng of happy animals. Now, I didn't make that up. That came from his biography or his bio in the back of the book. But a thriving throng of happy animals. So stay tuned. I do ask him about this hobby farm and his thriving throng of happy animals. But Daniel, you're wondering maybe what's the sports connection? Well, he played Division I college basketball at Oral Roberts University. And if you paid any attention to March Madness last year, you know that Oral Roberts made it to the Sweet 16 and missed out by just a couple of points to making it all the way to the Elite 8. Daniel played there about 20 years ago or so. And listen, he played Division I college basketball. That's more than I can say. And it means he was a pretty good basketball player. But then he followed in his dad's footsteps and he became a pastor. Now he's also an author. And the new book that he has is called The Power of Place, Choosing Stability in a Rootless Age. And I thought that he related this book into the sports world beautifully. So you're going to love this conversation, getting to know Daniel Grothe and then hearing more about the power of place and the idea of choosing stability in a rootless age. Take a listen to Daniel Grothe, my new friend, right here on Sports Spectrum. Daniel Grothe, welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How are you?
Great, Jason. Glad to be here today.
It's great to see you. Great to talk to you. We actually got to know each other in person.
Yep.
And I was going to sit here and try to describe what we were at. A gathering, I guess, is the best words to use. Yeah. But we were in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. I was scared driving there, if I'm completely honest. The last half hour, we were on this cliff on these dirt roads. Yeah. And we had a good time with about 30 or 40 of us just hanging out and loving Jesus and talking about, different things, dreaming about different things. But when I got to meet you, and I immediately clicked with you, but I thought, man, immediately when I heard your story, I was like, we got to have him on the podcast. So I'm so glad that we're able to do this. And you have your new book, The Power of Place, that we're going to talk about in a second. How would you describe that that. Is gathering the right word?
Yeah, a gathering of like-minded believers, different spheres of influence, different crafts, but all trying to live decent lives, be decent men, practice our craft excellently, and get to the finish line fully human. So, I mean, you got to have those gatherings where you get together and check on each other.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. It was my first time at this gathering, and it was such a neat thing. You kind of you go to some of these men's events and different things, but this was very intimate and very personal and with no real agenda, but
Right.
yet God really moved. So I'm glad that I was able to go. I hope I can go again. I'm just going to close my eyes for the last 40 minutes though on that drive, because I don't know, maybe
Brutal.
that freaked me out, man. We were on a
Brutal,
dirt
man.
road going
Yeah.
around corners. If you go too fast or somebody else is coming, I mean, you're going to meet your maker pretty quickly.
Uh,
It was fun though. I'm
yeah.
glad I went. I'm glad we connected. One of the things that really intrigued me about you, and I don't think I fully knew this when we were together in November talking, but we're both diehard suffering. I'll use that word too.
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys fans.
Listen, man, it'll either it'll destroy you or it'll make you holy. One.
I mean, jeez.
I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the closest team was the Cowboys. And that was in the years where Emmett and Troy and Michael Irvin and Dion and Alvin Harper and Moose and Novacek, all these guys were just destroying people.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a chance to not be a fan. And then one of their chaplains would come to my church every year, and he started coming on Super Bowl Sunday night. And very often his team was playing. And so one year I freaked out when I heard he was the chaplain. And the next year he came on Super Bowl Sunday night to speak, and he brought me a helmet signed by all of those guys that I just mentioned.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then a framed season ticket, the entire season of tickets with the entire team's signature on it. So I still have that today. It was quite a gift.
Wow. I'm sensing a little bit of jealousy coming out of me right now. That's
Well,
pretty
you've been on the
cool.
sidelines. I haven't.
That's true. I have, but you have too now, kind of, which is why I wanted to get to this story. I mean, we can talk
Yeah.
all day about, the disappointing ending to the 49ers and the fun that it was to see them winning again, but I'd rather not kind of rehash everything. But there was a moment, I think it was the Cardinals game, which wasn't a great ending either, by the way, but you got to do something pretty cool back in, I think it was right after New Year's
Yeah.
at a Cowboys game. Tell me about that.
So I was at my hotel that morning with my family. We told our kids we're not buying a bunch of gifts for Christmas. We're going to spend our money and make a memory. And I've never been to a NFL game, which is shocking. I'm 39. I'm a diehard sports fan. And I said, kids, we love Kyler Murray because we're OU Sooners fans. And we love the Cowboys. And CeeDee Lamb's an OU guy and Neville Gallimore. So let's go watch a team, two teams where we've got Sooners that we can cheer for. And so we bought tickets, went down to Dallas, and we were staying in our hotel. Got up that morning, game day, and went down and got our free breakfast in the cheap hotel. And there's this guy there with a Cowboys jersey on and a big cowboy hat. And just a fun character. So I struck it up with him. Hey, man, what's going on? What's your name? He said, I'm Smiley. I said, hey, Mr. Smiley, it's good to meet you. And I said, you going to the game today? He goes, I wouldn't miss it. He said, I haven't missed a game in 31 years. And I said, wow.
Yeah.
And so he said, are you going? I said, yep, first game ever. And he was blown away. He said, where's your tickets? I said, we are in the third to last row up in the, like literally looking out the window of the top.
Yeah.
And he goes, let me see if I can do something for you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, you're going to sit with me today down on the field. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, I've got tickets. I've got a box, luxury box. You watch on screen, someone scores a touchdown and they run and there's all these people there, grabbing at the ball. And so anyway, I didn't believe that it was going to happen. But sure enough, Mr. Smiley met us at the stadium, took us in ground level, walked out on the turf. And our kids are freaking out. And we sat in that luxury box. We were talking with the Arizona Cardinals players during the game. And Washington on their team, defensive back, gave us his gloves after the game. It was a great experience.
Oh my goodness. Like I had a really cool experience at a Cowboys Cardinals game, 2014, I think it was. And there was a good year for Dallas.
Yeah.
Romo was the quarterback and then he gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Weeden came in the game to play as a backup that year. But we were able to I knew somebody who worked with the Cowboys and he got us sideline passes. He couldn't get us tickets, but I bought my own tickets and we sat probably where you were going to sit,
Yeah.
up in the nosebleeds. Still got pictures of, and by the way, nosebleeds at AT&T Stadium, you're just staring at the giant screen the whole time.
Exactly.
You're not really watching the game. But when you can get on the field and get up close and see some of those guys, it's quite the experience, isn't it?
Unbelievable. And then after the game, he took us out on the field, and I got the dunk on the uprights, and our kids were throwing, toe tapping in the back of the end zone and laying out. It was just unbelievable. And I told my kids, guys, don't expect that this is every NFL game, but enjoy
I
it.
was going to say, you might take them to another game. Make sure they know to temper their expectations a little bit, Daniel.
Yep. Yeah.
That's such a cool experience and such a cool moment. Now, the love for the Cowboys, the love for the Oklahoma Sooners, the love for sports,
Yeah.
that starts at a pretty young age, I would imagine, for you.
Absolutely. Grew up Oklahoma boy, basketball, baseball, competing. My parents were pastors at a church, and the church had a school with it, and so I would have to stay there all the time after school, and so I would just go in the gym, just a gym rat, and that was our babysitter. Go play. So ended up going to Oral Roberts University and playing basketball there for a little bit. And my wife played 4 years of college volleyball, and when she graduated, had all the school records. So we both love to compete. When we're standing around our living room, we're throwing a football to each other, and our kids are wrestling. And so yeah, I wouldn't know who I am apart from competitive sports. And I tell my kids, they're all in club sports, I say, look, you'll stop playing sports at some point, but what you learn right now, you will always carry with you: the grit, the drive, the camaraderie. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Learning how to fight through team. So I love that experience, and I carry it with me to this day.
When you were, let's say, 18, 19, deciding to go to Oral Roberts, by the way, Division I basketball, which is pretty awesome. So you're clearly a good player. If you have to go to that level, not many people make that level. Was your dream to be a pastor and follow in Dad's footsteps, which is ultimately what took place, or was it to kind of be an NBA player? I'm kind of leaning towards the identity issue here for you at 18, 19. Where was that for you?
I think 18, 19, by that point, I had already figured out that probably wouldn't be my path, but I was going to go as long as I could. Great memories. The team dynamic. I think probably 10, 12, 13, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the next whatever, Steve Nash, or
Was that your guy when you were a kid?
That was one of my guys for sure.
Yeah.
And then really was working on it and had a great run, but I think somewhere around 19, 20, I go, look, this isn't going to be my future. I've got a full ride that doesn't depend on me continuing to play for all 4 years. I was a musician. Let's have a campus life. Because in college sports, they got you 80 hours a week. I had a 3.75 GPA with mandatory study hall, and I just thought, I'm wasting so much of my time here. So let's transition. And then at that point, I knew that I respected my parents' work as pastors. Both of them have been pastors for 45 years. But it wasn't the family business for me. I loved it. I had great experiences. I grew up in nursing homes and hospitals and doing funerals and weddings with my parents, and I thought every 5-year-old was doing that. So I respected it. But somewhere around 20, it was my sophomore year at ORU, I thought, okay, I love what my parents have done. I think based on my skills, what I get out of bed doing really well, what I care about, what I love, I think that fits beautifully with the pastoral vocation. So I went into the registrar's office and declared a theology degree and started chasing that road at that point.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I do want to ask you, kind of going backwards a little bit, or I guess forward, as an ORU guy, watching what they did in 2021 had to be pretty incredible, right?
Unbelievable. And I was talking to several of my friends in the athletic department, because I'm still really tied in there, and they said that hits on the website and applications to the university went up 400% on the backside of a Sweet 16 run. Folks, brand exposure, it matters. And so it was really cool. We were 1 point away from getting to the NCAA tournament.
To the Elite Eight.
Played, and but just unbelievable. I mean, to see these folks come through. My parents, ORU back in the day, was in the Elite Eight, and they were playing the Kansas Jayhawks in the 70s, and my parents were in the arena that night when they lost to Kansas right at the buzzer that would have sent them through. So anyway, I got 4 or 5 decades with my family of loving ORU ball.
Yeah, I mean, we had their coach on and to talk about that run, and he was awesome, not just talking about how much he appreciated what they were able to go through, and certainly the brand awareness. You can't pay any amount of money to get that, but the opportunity to be on a platform like that and share the gospel and be intentional about it. And he recognized that. And I thought, man, what a great way to not just, achieve and accomplish something, but to use it as a way to point to Christ.
Paul Mills is a great man and just as decent as they come, and he understands what matters. And I think that's what I love about Sports Spectrum is you have all these people that we know and we watch them and they're excellent at their craft, they're world class. But these are also people who know that the sport thing that they're doing is tucked up underneath the larger umbrella of the kingdom of God and of living a wholesome, decent life and of taking care of the poor and of using our skills to bless others. And so I love what you're doing here because you're bringing us these people who understand what really matters.
I appreciate that, Daniel. Daniel Grothe is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Do you still pick up a ball and play from time to time? Still playing pickup?
I was playing last night. What I try to do is my son, one of them, he's a club basketball player, and he's out twice a week, 2-hour practices. So I'll go up to the gym and I'll run stairs and I'll hoop on the side hoop. I'm 39, almost 40. I'm debating, and we'll talk later this year to see if I get there. But I'm debating. When I went to college, my strength and conditioning coach really helped me explode. All the snatches and the cleans and the jerks and the box jumps and stuff. And I went from being a decent jumper in high school to flying in college. And it was really fun to be able to throw down any kind of way I wanted. And I dunked at 33, so 6 years ago. And I set at the beginning of this year, like, do I want at 40 to try to have a goal to dunk again? 6'1" white guy, pastor, I have to run just to stay chubby. But do I want to set a goal of pushing for that? So I'm out there on the sidelines while my kids are practicing, thinking through, should I push myself to that goal for October?
I mean, I hope you get it, man. I really do.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do update us. I'll tell you, when I turned 40, I'm 48 now, so I'm a little older than you. But when I used to play, I actually got better after I finished high school, and I played a little bit of community college basketball. I just love to play. I wouldn't say I was a great player, but I love to play. I love to compete. And we would play into my 20s in different leagues. Then I got into my church and began my walk with Christ, and we were playing in church leagues, and I continued to play. Didn't always represent Jesus too well on the basketball court, if I'm being completely honest, Daniel. But it got to 40, and I guess I played a couple more years. When I was at ESPN, we would play pickup with some of the guys there, and that was a lot of fun. But it was like 42. I had this freak hand injury where it required like 13 stitches in between my 2 fingers. It was just gross. And I was like, okay, how much more is this worth it?
There's a reward where it tips over toward it's not worth it anymore. I didn't tear an ACL or do anything damaging during my career.
Right.
Why would I want to do that at 40 and rebuild? So anyway, I just want to keep active.
Well, I was going to say, there was a guy I worked with at ESPN who was like probably 45, and I was maybe 40 at the time. And he tore his Achilles playing basketball. And this dude is on like a 9-month rehab and a cast and all that. And I'm thinking, all because he just played pickup basketball. I'm not going to be that guy. So I stopped playing at 44, 43. I miss it terribly, but I don't miss being in pain or having a potential injury. So I'm not saying you need to get there, because I used to play with dudes who were in their 50s and 60s and still balling. I just can't be that guy.
I'm not going to be that guy.
There you go. All right. Well, it's going to be a hard time, though. To walk away was really difficult, even just to walk away from playing pickup. But now I just go for long walks, Daniel. Sad, right?
That's good.
It keeps me in shape. That's the best thing I can tell you about. Daniel Grothe is here with us on Sports Spectrum. He's got a new book, The Power of Place. choosing stability in a rootless age. I was really fascinated when you were telling me about this book when we were hanging out together a couple months back, and then I got a copy and I started reading it, and I'm like, this is kind of backwards in a lot of ways to what the world is looking at. You know, the idea of chasing your dream and moving on to the next thing. And I mean, you think about sports, right? It's always about the next contract, potentially moving to the next job, the next position. You know, the higher you can achieve, the higher you can go. Your book's kind of counter to that. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So uh, when the saints of old took vows, we know, believers through the generations have taken vows. We know that they would have taken the vow of chastity with their sexuality. Like, your body's not your own, you're bought with a price, therefore honor God with your body. Sure. Like, stay clean. We know they would have taken vows of charity with their money, that, God has blessed us to be a blessing. Open your hearts, open your pocketbooks, take care of the poor, leave the edges of your field. Sure, the vow of charity. We also know that they would have taken the vow of obedience to Scripture, that the Bible is our book and that matters. I knew all that, but as I started researching through seminary and reading up through church history, what I didn't realize was the first vow believers would take when they would take their vows was the vow of stability in place. That I'm going to put my roots down here, that I'm going to, if God doesn't demand I leave, I'm going to try to die right where I am. I'm going to leverage all of my strength, all of my skill, all of my resource, all of my influence to take care of these people in this particular place. And we live in the age of wanderlust. We live in this moment that has no frame of reference for a vow of stability. The grass is greener on the other side. If you can make more money, chase the opportunity. We live in a culture of impermanence. Think about the iPhones we have, or all the technology we have is set up to be obsolete in the next 18 months.
Right.
They want us to keep moving. Half of our marriages don't make it. We've got this culture of impermanence that we're living in. The transfer portal and free agency. Good
Right.
Lord. I mean, it is an absolute cluster out there. And I was talking with someone that I met at the same gathering we were at in November, Thomas
Yes.
Williams, who played at USC for
That's
Pete
right.
Carroll, and just a monster, played in the NFL 5 years. And Thomas said, I was asking him about the transfer portal, and he goes, Daniel, what people don't realize is that with this new development, now college students who participate in that way of being, they will have no identity with school. He said it used to be that you were out of school for 4 years and you were a Trojan, USC Trojan, and you're doing all the stuff, and all these people will say, look, you were faithful to our program, you got a job here anytime, and you knew who you were, and you had friends, and you had professors that invested in you, and coaches over 4 years. He said now it's not unreasonable to think that a player from 18 to 22 years old will be at 2, maybe 3 colleges, and they won't have any school identity. They won't have that, like, the community's invested in you because you invested in the school. And he said at 18 to 22 years old, you don't really yet know who you are. And that college experience is a way of you kind of getting grounded and developing that. So all of that to say, we are living in this age of impermanence, of moving, of looking for the next biggest opportunity, build our brand, move on to the next thing. And I think we have to ask ourselves, we have to interrogate our own moment in culture, in society. How's that working out for us? With the breakdown of family, with loss of, we have more money than any society in the history of humankind. And we are medicating ourselves with drink, with recreational drug, with sex, with whatever. We have to ask if we're deeply happy. And yet I go to the third world, and you've been there, a developing world. You travel around the world. I've been in townships in South Africa where people are absolutely broke, or the mountains of China and Nepal. They have nothing. But there's this deep embedded communal spirit where they know each other. There's multi-generational relationships. They're deeply loved. They don't have money. They don't have deep pockets, but they have a richness of spirit that we in the first world West do not have. So this book is a call to reclaim that ancient vow of stability, and to learn not just what financial capital looks like, but what social capital looks like.
Man, that's such a good challenge, I think, for those listening, including myself. I mean, I've really only worked in two places in the last 21 years, I guess, three places in the last 20, I mean, three places in my whole career.
Yeah.
But yes, I was always thinking about where could I go? What might that look like? I mean, even now, as I'm hitting 50 years old soon in a couple of years,
Mhm.
I'm already thinking like, I don't want to stay in Connecticut and I want to retire somewhere where it's warm and I want to be here and I want to be there. And I'm thinking, man, I'm not even focused on like right here, right now.
Yeah.
This has got to be a challenge for so many. Have you heard from people who've read the book and thought, man, you've just completely opened my eyes to something foreign that I want to really institute?
Absolutely. I'm hearing every day from people that I've never met who've read it and said, why is no one else saying this? Like, thank you for helping me reclaim the Christian tradition. Like, I didn't know that's what Christians talked about centuries ago. And it's not, look, let me just say, this is not a book that romanticizes place.
Right.
This is not a book that says you'll never ever leave or you should never ever leave. Abraham and Sarah, Genesis 12, go to a land that I will show you. It is quite possible. I'd lived in Tulsa for 22 years and 17 years ago moved to Colorado Springs. We had a go to a land that I will show you kind of moment. So that may be a part of our story, period. And even then, when we do move, we've got to plant. And we've got to, I mean, Jeremiah 29:11, we know it. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. We take that out of its context and put it on our refrigerator. But we don't know that Jeremiah 29:1-10 is God saying through the prophet Jeremiah to the people of Israel, yeah, you're going to be exiled for 70 years. It's not going to be your favorite thing. It's not blessed and highly favored. It's not, it's not a Disneyland experience. Because of what you've done, you're going to be away from the homeland for a while. And he says, plant gardens, start businesses, marry your children off, seek the peace and the prosperity of the place to which I've sent you. This is Babylon,
Yeah.
the arch enemy of Israel. He says, seek the peace and the prosperity of the place to which I've sent you. For if it prospers, you too will prosper. So God says to them, like, this is where you are right now. And while you're here, make this place better, make it flourish, because if it flourishes, you too will flourish. So let me address the move thing. Like, if there is a move, or if there's a question in your soul, or you sense the Lord is loosening your roots, like, how do we know where to move? What place? Like, I've created this little acronym in the book. It's on page 51. It's DROPS. It's not airtight, but I think it's a helpful matrix to look through on discovering where we ought to move. First is desire. There are certain places, Jason, that I just have no desire to ever be. Like, I won't say those places because likely you're listening and you live there. And I'm glad God has called you there and it's beautiful.
It's okay to say Connecticut, by the way, if you want to. That's where I live.
Bristol's beautiful, man. Anyway, so desire, like the Lord, God will give you the desires of your heart. And there's something about Colorado Springs that has captured my imagination. It's insinuated itself into my soul. And other people come here and they're like, what the heck, man? But God has spoken to me. God has put it in. So desire. Second thing is relationships. Like to your point of, coming up on 50 and I don't want to be in the cold forever and where should I go? I wouldn't go anywhere where I didn't at least have a little subset of relationships that I can be brought into. Like to show up in a place as a total stranger, I don't know. Like Jesus sent them out 2 by 2. And there's a reason for that, because he doesn't want us lonely when we go places. So
It's good.
pay attention to relationships. Is there a little nexus of relationships there that you can find yourself grafted into? The third thing is opportunity. Desire, relationship, opportunity. I wouldn't just throw my stuff in a car and not go anywhere where there wasn't a semblance of opportunity. Like, do you have a job offer? Do you have relationships there where you might be able to start something together? Like, pay attention to opportunities that arise, and does desire and relationship sync up with that? The next thing is purpose. Purpose. Nashville needs world-class musicians, and Oklahoma needs oil field workers, and Silicon Valley needs great engineers. And like, is there something for you to get out of bed in the morning to do that will, you got to have purpose. And then the last thing is skills. Like, where do your skills sync up? And there's got to be little pockets or regions where your desire and your relationships and opportunity and purpose and skills kind of coalesce into this moment where you go, I think the Spirit of the Lord is moving me to ... So that's a helpful matrix that you can consider as you think about if a move is on the horizon, maybe run it through that grid.
No, I like that. Desire, relationships, opportunity, purpose, and skills. The acronym is DROPS. It's on page 51 of Daniel's new book, The Power of Place, Choosing Stability in a Rootless Age. Let me close with this as we wind down. First of all, well, I got two questions, I guess. Let me ask you the fun one on the back end. But if you're talking to a sports audience, which in this case you probably are, you're talking to people who love sports, love Jesus, might be a coach, might be a player. Sometimes it just might be someone like me who loves sports and, is just trying to do the right thing and raise their kids right, be a good husband. How can people in the sports world put this to practice? Because I think your acronym is great. And I'm also thinking, and maybe that's the answer, but you're talking about that kid who's trying to make the decision to go to college. You're talking about that coach that might have this opportunity. And is it a better opportunity or is it not? You wrote about an opportunity that you had very recently in the beginning of the book, and it didn't come together. And you were kind of, I don't know, devastated might be a harsh word, but it felt like that when I was reading it. So there are a lot of people, especially in the sports space, that are wondering where to go, making hard decisions, some that might call them in further places. Send some encouragement to them. What would you share to them?
Well, first of all, sports, I think, reveals to us this instinct that place matters.
Yes.
How in the world could Cleveland Browns fans just love that organization for 50 years? Because they're from freaking Cleveland, right?
That's right.
And I love this place so much, and it's in my bones, it's in my soul. My grandpa and my grandma made me who I am. And I sat around and watched Grandpa drink a beer and yell at the TV. And for better or for worse, Cleveland is in my, you see in sport, this place is in us. We love when it's working rightly. We have a connection to the place that we are from, and we love to support that place in the wilderness and in the promised land. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. You get the point. Yes. So I think it's all right there. To your example of the young college kid, I would just say, look, college, that age, it's an age of discovery. The Spirit of the Lord will lead you. You don't know enough yet. I couldn't have known 20 years ago when I was at ORU playing ball that my life would look like this in Colorado Springs. There's just pay attention to the little breadcrumbs along the way. You'll have opportunities arise, and someone called me at 20 and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about Colorado Springs? You've got a job here if you want it." And at 20, that just was a seed that got planted in my soul. And at 22, I got married and we moved here. So if you're young, have great people around you who can help you be a community of discernment. They can pray with you, they can encourage you, they can challenge you, they can walk with you as you find your place. If you're older, I would say we have got to learn what true riches look like. And we in our first world Western society automatically assume that more money equals greater riches. And I'm just here to challenge that. And there are lots of people. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Damian Lillard, but something about Portland got in him. Yes. And he's been interviewed about this for years. Like, hey, go to a better franchise, get you a ring. There's more money. He goes, I don't need any more money. There's something about being here. And I think that's instructive. His family is settled there. He's got an identity there. He's figured out how to love the way of life there. So I always ask people, I create scenarios. Kansas City calls you and they offer $120,000 and you're living in Oklahoma City making 80. In Oklahoma City, you have parents and grandparents, you've got a church community, you've got friends that you went to high school with that are close by. You know the place, you've got your routines, you've got a house that's cheaper to live there. And Kansas City calls you and offers you 120. What do you do? And they immediately go, whoa. And you get to see values arise, questions arise. Well, it's Kansas City. Why? Because it's 120. Okay. But you go there and you don't have parents and grandparents and built-in babysitters. You don't know the community. So you're going to leave to make 40 grand more, but you're losing deep riches. So helping people tease out what true riches look like, I think that's a really important question for our moment in time.
Man, that's really well said, Daniel. Thanks for sharing that. As we wind down, here's the question I wanted to ask you, because
Yeah.
I'm reading your bio, and I don't think we talked about this when we were together. And it says, married to Lisa, lives on a hobby farm
Yes.
outside of the Springs with their 3 kids and a thriving throng of happy animals. So I
Yeah.
need to hear about, I don't even know what a hobby farm is. I guess it's exactly what it describes. It's a farm, but you're just doing it as a hobby. You're not doing it to live.
Yes.
But tell me, I got to hear about this farm and all the different animals you guys have.
We bought 120 acres with my sister and brother-in-law and another family. There's 11 kids between the 3 families.
Hmm.
It was in a family for 100 years, bought in the Great Depression, and they owned 920 acres. We bought the 120 acre homestead and then divided it up 40, 40, 40 between the families. My brother-in-law, I'm looking right now out my window, he's got 6 horses. We've raised and processed nearly 30 cows in the last 3 years. Our kids are a part of that, feeding them chores each night. We all have chickens, ducks, goats, 30 pigs over there. We're breeding dogs. Our kids are working. There's a creek that runs through. My son, my little 9-year-old, shot a coyote just recently that was chasing our dogs.
Wow.
So we live out here, and one night, crazy story. My daughter was 12 at the time, so 2 years ago. I said, kids, because their cousins and friends are nearby, you have to tell them like hard deadlines. Be at the kitchen table at 6. Dinner will be hot and ready. Wash your hands. Seated at 6. Yes, sir. And then they run and play. Well, 6 o'clock, my boys are back, sitting at the table, but my daughter's not. And my phone rings. It's my brother-in-law next door, and I go, "Hey, David." And it was Lillian, my daughter, and she goes, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be about 20 minutes late to dinner." And I immediately wanted to say, "Lillian, I told you," but I didn't. I paused, and I said, "What's the issue, Lillian?" She said, "Dad, I'm not done castrating the piglets yet. I've got to suture them up, so it's going to be about 20 more minutes." And I thought she had 8 piglets that she had castrated, and she was with Uncle David suturing them back up. And I thought, when did I ever think my 12-year-old daughter would string together that sentence? I will be 20 minutes late to dinner because the piglets aren't done being castrated. So we're giving our kids the chance. We said if we're going to leave the neighborhood, we're going to give them a chance to practice, to fail, to learn, to take risks. And it's been a great time growing up out here on the land and giving our kids the chance to play.
All right. So here's my I guess ask. So I go out to Highlands Ranch a lot for work. That's where Sports Spectrum is the home base of Sports Spectrum is in Highlands Ranch. I think that's about 45 minutes from the area where you live.
Yes. Yep.
So I got to come down and I got to see this farm. And I actually got to bring my daughter. She's older. She's 17.
Yep.
She'll be 18 and going to college soon. But I told her I would take her out. We would go to a Broncos game. But let's make it like a
come play, bro.
And then let's come down and see this farm.
And next time we send off the cows, I'll send you a couple ribeye steaks that we raised out here as a little sign from Quiet Waters Ranch. So
well, now you're speaking to my heart, Daniel. Now you're speaking right to my heart when you're talking about steak. Listen, congrats on the book. Appreciate you doing this. This was a lot of fun for me to have a chat with you, and we'll hopefully have you back on, and maybe we'll talk about some good Dallas Cowboy
yes, sir.
memories and not some tough ones.
Great to be on the show, Jason. Thanks for having me.
And many thanks to Daniel Grothe for being here today on Sports Spectrum. Go get his book. It's called The Power of Place, Choosing Stability in a Rootless Age, released by Thomas Nelson and available now everywhere books are found. It's a great read. It's not a terribly long read either. It's maybe, 200 pages or so. And there's a lot of underlining and highlighting, I think, that you'll do when you get this book, The Power of Place. And Daniel is just one of the better dudes I've ever met when I think about this, just having met him over the past 4 or 5 months. Obviously, we have a mutual love and let's say suffering, if you will, with the Dallas Cowboys. But Daniel's encouragement for people, I thought was really good, especially those in the sports world, and the culture of impermanence that he talked about, finding those deeper riches, and the idea of stability in place. But then I want to share with you something that nobody else would know about other than Daniel. but I'm going to share it here. There was a moment after I stopped recording with him that I just needed some counseling on something, a really big moment for me regarding a family member who passed away. And I was asked to speak at this funeral, and I was a little nervous about it. And Daniel spent 10 minutes just pouring encouragement on me. And it just gave me hope and confidence to be able to go and share at this funeral, because it's always hard at funerals. But I want to be respectful to the people that are there, but I also want to understand that this is a responsibility to share the gospel to those that were in attendance. And Daniel was just dynamite in encouraging me with that. And I'm just super thankful for that, as much as I am about this conversation. So I hope that tells you more about the person of Daniel Grothe. And I hope if you're in Colorado Springs, you'll check out his new church, I should say, New Life Church down there in Colorado Springs. So again, thanks to Daniel. Thanks to you for tuning in. We always do appreciate you. I know I say this pretty much on every podcast, but it's not a joke. It really is the truth. We appreciate you guys. I mean, the fact that you would take out 30 or 40 minutes of your time to listen to this show and to tune into Sports Spectrum, it means a ton to us. And, we want to do this to glorify God. We want to bring Christ into the sports conversation. I thought we did that today with Daniel. If you like what you heard, do us a favor, share that with someone else. That would be amazing. Let them know about this conversation, or let them know about the Sports Spectrum brand and the idea that we're covering the athletes and the coaches that you know, and taking it from a different perspective and telling their Jesus stories. So share that with someone else, and then click that follow or that subscribe button on whatever app you listen to on podcast. That way you never miss an episode of this show. And we're churning out 3 to 4 episodes a week. And it's a great way to stay in touch with all that we have going on at Sports Spectrum by subscribing and following this podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum.